Good evening everyone, what is the crack? We're in Algarve this week in the F3 and we are struggling. Doing alright now though. It took a lot of laps but I have a P2 time now. P1 is still 0.9 ahead of me but it's a good P2 time, good solid setup, very dependable, and I'm not too far off this pace, with race pace, so all good so far. If any of you haven't seen this before, I'm going to break this down into individual sections. So the first is going to be a flying hot lap. The second is going to be a hot lap where I actually break it down corner by corner, rewind, fast forward, show you exactly where everything happens and why I think you save time in certain positions. And then we look a little bit at racecraft and we look at setup as well. So that's kind of the gist of how these videos work. And this is my fancy little intro, so let's get cracking into it. And here we go. So in the last corner of the lap you want to get on the throttle as early as possible because you want to carry loads of speed here. I think there might still be some room for improvement in my gearing, but we'll see how that all goes. At the blue sign on the right, drop 2 gears. Careful with that bump, you don't want to be accelerating full over that bump because the car will get upset. As soon as you're kind of straightened up, you want to drop down to second gear, nice and wide, over to the right hand side, up to third gear, feather the throttle going over that bump. You can adjust the suspension to make it a little bit bouncier there, but I recommend using this one. When you see the bollards on the left, you want to start braking hard. Second gear, I lost time in that corner. It was quick enough, but it wasn't. So stay over to the left, flat out through here. And as soon as you're kind of straightening up down to second gear, use all of the track possible because there are no complicated corners just here. Drift over to the right, all the way up into fifth gear. Let the corner open up, stay kind of in the middle and aim for the middle of the curb that you can see. Drop down. I'll go into more detail on the slower version of this lap. Look at the bollards on the left, brake just after them. Second gear, get in nice and close to that yellow sausage curb. Way out to the right here, up into third but only briefly. Lose your speed early and then as soon as you're settled, accelerate as hard as you can. There may be time in that last corner as well, and maybe with a higher aero setup you might be able to take that quicker as well, but with a higher aero setup you would actually lose some of that time potentially on the straight here. So let's see what the actual official time for this lap was. This is a 1:33.18. So let's jump into the slower, more broken down version. So let's fast forward to the corner because you guys don't want to be hanging around forever. You've got laps to do. So keep an eye out for, there are markers on the left as well. I don't actually use those. I tend to look for these on the right. So just at the, just before the blue one on the right, which is the equivalent I guess of the 100 on the left, just after the 100. Brake and down 2 gears, so you can see I'm braking quite hard, but I kind of trail brake into it a little bit. There's a very nasty bump there, so look at my throttle. I'm only touching the throttle, kind of feathering it, and just as I go over that bump I actually back off even though I'm not fully committed, and into fourth gear, down to second gear. So your brake point here is pretty much, see the sign, the white sign on the right, pretty much there, kind of maybe slightly before it. Second gear, get in close to that curb on the left. This is a very tight corner, way tighter than you would think. The car, because it's such a rigid car, wants to flatten, so as soon as the front tire comes down, if you're fully committed to the throttle and at the wrong angle, the back is going to kick out, so be very careful of that. So what I do is go nice and wide up to third gear and keep an eye again on my throttle in the top left, going up the hill, so that's almost full throttle. You don't actually notice too much of a difference, and it allows you to get a really smooth, really quick exit out of that corner. Then here, these are the bollards that I was talking about. There are some cones and bollards, so just when you're pretty much at those, brake hard, down to second gear and catch that apex on the left. You really want to, I guess, get on the throttle as early as possible there was room for improvement there, as I say. So here, stay way over to the left because you want to be flat out, flat, flat, flat. Grab a little bit of this apex, and just after that apex, pretty much when you've cleared that and you're facing the curb ahead, start braking down to second gear. And again, you want to catch as much of that curb on the right as you can. I'm a little bit off it, but you want to go out because the car needs to stay pretty much in as straight a line as possible for as long as possible. So you want to use all those flowing fluid lines where possible. All the way up to fifth gear, up over the crest. Word of advice here, don't worry about this corner until you actually see it. So go flat, flat, flat. I know it's a tricky corner. Go as hard as you can until you actually see it. Let me turn on this light. You guys can't see me properly at all. There we go. Go flat, flat, flat until you see it. So see flat, flat, flat. I'm pretty much in the middle of the track. So nice and flat. And again, I'll cover it a little bit when it comes to racecraft. But being on the middle of the track here gives you pretty good advantage. You might tempt someone to go inside. If they go inside, they're likely to run wide unless they get in front of you and start blocking you, in which case you can go out to the left. People are unlikely to go out to the left, although if they really have confidence in the corner, going out to the left, they may be able to undercut you if they know they're quicker mid-corner. But that aside, so the corner pretty much reveals itself. This is only a marker. This is not the corner yet, right? The curve that you see on the right, don't worry about it. Kind of aim for it. And as soon as you kind of see it, there's a curb beyond it. You know that you want to slow down and go towards that curb. You want to go beyond this apex. This apex is not fully relevant. So you're going right out to this curb, and then kind of before this camera that you see, I don't know what a good marker is, but you want to get out nice and wide, and then start turning in, and that's where your apex is. So you want to get nice and wide out to that curb, and then if you keep an eye on my throttle here, I start committing to the throttle, and once you commit, you can already see that curb. You go over it, a little bit of feathering of the throttle because the same effect of that tilt might happen. So you have to be very careful in these corners. So let me just play that once more. So corner revealed itself. Aim for the curb on the right. Use that as a marker, so that almost kind of guides you at your braking point. Brake, 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 brake. Down to second gear. Take it nice and handy through there and accelerate as hard as you can. The better an exit you get, the more speed you get up here. You've got these bollards on the right, or these water barriers. Just after those, you want to brake down to second gear. Grab as much of that apex as possible. Accelerate hard, hard, hard. I'm not 100% sure about this corner. In an ideal world, I think I would brake a little bit more in a straight line and attack it a little bit harder. One important thing though is to stay out wide. The temptation here is to go for this curb. If you go for this curb, you're kind of screwing yourself on the corner. And I think I maybe did a little bit. But you can afford to stay nice and wide, nice and wide. You can actually be wider than this to get a better attack here, and you actually put less wear on your left-hand tires. So that's kind of where setup and stuff comes into it. As far as racecraft is concerned, you're going to want to, I guess, not only nail your corners, but bear in mind that somebody who gets a good exit out of the corner, regardless of how just doing a track guide. So regardless of how somebody comes out of that corner, regardless of how well you take the corner, you need to get a good exit, because most of the corners here are followed by straights. So loads and loads of straights, loads of streamlining. I wouldn't gear your car too low, because if you streamline up behind someone, you're going to get to pass them out, and it's going to be there's going to be a lot of that. I'd say the main straight might even be long enough that if somebody gets you coming out of the corner, you can get back up behind them and streamline them, line them again. Don't go too wide into turn one. One of you will end up killing yourselves. So don't really advise that. Any of these more tricky corners, just concentrate on nailing them. don't concentrate on racing someone in those corners. They're tricky enough without extra variables thrown in there. Use your discipline. If you're putting pressure on people, they're going to make mistakes on this track, because the people with the most pace will win the race here. It's not a track where it's easy to block people or whatever. You're only allowed one adjustment on the straights or whenever anybody's overtaking you. So I'd recommend just concentrating on your own race. And that cam tool is so cool. Just concentrate on your own race, and don't be too put off. Don't try to race people too much. Just give yourself the opportunity to nail the corners, and you will get the positions. So that's about it for this week's track. Oh, actually, setup. Forgot to talk about setup. I've adjusted some tire pressures. The diff. I've actually lowered the diff. What else have I done? I have messed around with the aero a little bit, so I've got slightly more aero. What else have I done? Anyway, there's a link in the description below. Anybody who's new here, be sure to hit subscribe in the description below while you're down there. And that's about it for this week's track guide. I will see you on track on Tuesday night. I'll be live streaming, all going well, and we're here on Thursday as well for the mixed multi-class. So thanks a million for watching. Chat to you later.